Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session on sustainability in operations management. Nice to have you all here. My name is Timo Lainema, and I will now start sharing the presentation. As I said, my name is Timo Lainema. I'm the developer of RealGame and the CEO of the company. RealGame is a Finland-based company providing cloud-based simulation learning tools internationally to universities and business schools. As developer of RealGame, my aim has been to give students and learners the possibility to learn about business processes, operations management, and supply chain management. Today, we are here to talk about how RealGame can be used to enhance learning about sustainable operations management. And together with me, I'm glad to say, we have Professor Daniel Chicksand. Thank you very much for joining us. Daniel, would you say a couple of words about yourself?
Yeah, great. I'm Dan Chicksand. I'm a professor of operations and supply chain management at Birmingham University in the UK. And actually, I'm here really as a fan of RealGame because I use RealGame on lots of my programs, whether that's in the UK or in other places. And I wanted to kind of bring my, I suppose, practical experience of using business simulations to teach sustainable operations and supply chain management.
Thank you, Daniel. So the session today, Daniel will first give us some background on the challenges of sustainable operations management or supply chain management education. The brief of the session today is a RealGame live session. So we will demonstrate to you how RealGame is used by the students and what the students learn when they manage their simulation companies. And then finally, we have a questions and answers section in the end. So please feel free to ask us about RealGame. You can also send your questions during the session here using the Zoom chat option. So you are welcome to do that, and then we might comment on the questions on the fly or then in the end of the session today. So in the session today, we will look into how to illustrate a couple of dynamics in operations management that are traditionally challenging to teach. So by illustrating the cause effects in the materials process and the monetary process, and then connect the operations to carbon emissions. But Daniel will first give us some context to that topic. So Daniel, if you please.
Great. Thank you, Tim. I'm not going to spend long on this. And when we start looking at the simulations, we do want it to be interactive. So I'm going to be looking at the questions coming in. And if we can actually answer them as we go through the session, we will, rather than leaving them all to the end. But look, I've been in a great position of teaching operations and supply chain management for the last sort of 20 odd years. And we all know that sustainability is a hot topic, whether that's at an operational level or the supply chain level. But how do we make it engaging and realistic? You know, we've all relied on, teaching some of the theoretical concepts such as like triple bottom line. And this is fine and it's a good starting point. But before I discovered RealGame, I found it quite difficult to kind of bring those to life. To really show students the practical trade-offs that are inherent in managing operations as well as managing extended supply chains. And what we're going to try and show through the today's webinar, through showing you a RealGame simulation, is how you can actually use it as a way of teaching sustainability metrics and performance indicators. That's one of the key areas. So instead of doing what I would have done in the past and run a case, now you can actually get the students to look at and identify things like energy use, emissions, resource efficiency, and actually try and understand how these metrics align, or in some cases often conflict with other KPIs such as cost, lead time and profit. And that has been quite theoretical in the past, but now with the use of the simulation, what Timo is going to say, we can actually see that it's quite practical. The second one which I kind of covered, is also trade-offs and decision making. When you're trying to make decisions around sustainability, I've got a group of MBA students and some MSc students at the moment playing. What they need to be able to think about is how being more sustainable might trade off against things like cost. And although in the short term this might have a detrimental impact for maybe things like return on investment, it does over the long term maybe build closer relationships with their customers. And obviously, if it's driven by customer need as well. And I think what the simulation also helps you do much more than I've been able to find in any type of case-based teaching is this idea of systems thinking and the interconnected nature of operations. Because you're getting teams to manage supply chains right from the procurement of raw material right through to the production of process to the delivery of products and services. You can see how it's the decisions made across all those different parts of the supply chain that can impact, in particular, our focus today on things like corporate social responsibility, CO2 levels, and so on. And the last one is obviously in a world where we're driven by data, we need to, I think, get our students much more familiar with taking big data and using real-time analytics to make decisions. And what Timo will show through the RealGame's business intelligence is that behind the simulation is lots of data which students can then go into, have a look at, and help them think about the decisions they're making. So hopefully we'll bring some of these aspects to life through Timo's simulation, but of course ask questions as we go along. Okay, thanks, Timo.
Thank you, Daniel. So we will have a look at how teachers can use RealGame to teach these topics. But before that, let me briefly introduce the general environment of the simulation game. So here we are. So this is the RealGame architecture. The student teams manage the simulated companies. The component and the customer markets are computer simulated, and student teams operate the company's operations and supply chain. Student teams compete for customers and best results. All their actions affect the other teams via the markets. Students work in teams of 3 to 4 participants, and teamwork allows for peer learning and highlights the importance of cross-functional collaboration and builds essential work-life competencies. And it's time to move to the simulation game. Now you can also see how Daniel looks like. So I will now demonstrate how students manage their companies. I will first show examples of basic decisions in supply chain tasks. And after this, I will add carbon emissions related aspects to the simulation operations. And finally, we show how students use data to analyze their company's performance and improve the results, whether it's about improving operational efficiency, increasing profitability, improving customer service, or minimizing company carbon footprint. So let me start the simulation. Let's share the screen. Here we are. So what you see here is one company of one student team. RealGame simulates business operations in an authentic manner. So student teams steer their company operations. They purchase components from the component markets, manage their inventory and production process, and deliver customer orders to the end customer markets. Events in RealGame unfold continuously. You now see that the clock is actually running, so it advances hour by hour. And the teams, of course, they need to keep up with the events by managing the operations and the supply chain of their companies. Business processes and lead times depicted in RealGame are as in real-world business, and cause effects between business operations and profit and cash flow are shown realistically and in real time. Because the system is real-time processed, it can also record transaction-specific data. That means that every action taken in the game in purchasing, production, or customer deliveries are recorded in the company ERP system. And this data provides an exceptional basis for analysis covering reports from company operations as well as business intelligence reports, exactly as in contemporary companies and their ERP systems today. So let's have a look at how students make decisions here. Very simple, basic decisions in their supply chain. And then we can also see how they can see the effects of their decisions in the supply chain and in the company cash flow, for example. And of course, one of the learning aims in this is that the students learn, for example, about cause effects and lead times. And Daniel, feel free to throw in comments if you wish.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that actually from a teaching base, what I try and do is I would have started by introducing concepts like capacity management. So the module I'm teaching at the moment, they don't just get thrown into this. I think that's important. I've gone through things like forecasting, I've got through inventory management, and I've gone through capacity management, those three core elements. And then we've done some forecasting together. So when they actually get to see this platform, those concepts have already been explored. And I think that's important. So one of the things that RealGame were very good at was helping me to think about how could I integrate subjects that I want to teach into the simulation. And some of this looks a little complicated to begin with, and my students who sat today, had a little bit of time to look at it. But actually, because you've introduced the concepts and you can make it more complex as you go along, you can just start with the basics. Thank you, Timo.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Let's open this one also, which shows us the component inventories in a graphical format. So, and I will turn on the evening shift so that we can continue seeing the operations evolve. So the interface we see here is for a student team. And as I already mentioned, it's normally 3 or 4 students who steer their company. They all have access, their personal access to their companies, so they can actually take roles in the simulation and start working in roles. Of course, before they come to the simulation, they need to know something about the company, about the environment. We have all the learning materials here online in the simulation company. So for example, the pre-assignment that is here. And it's a very simple one. So the students are told that how much they can expect to sell their end products. And then using the bill of material, they can calculate the daily need of different components in the production process. A very simple one. Well, let's have a look at some of the principles of decision making. So this window here, this is our production process, which is a very simple one. So our end product is called solar panel, and it has a certain bill of material. So to manufacture solar panels, we need photocells, frames, and junction boxes. And of course, what happens in the production process, first of all, the bars here, they indicate our production output per hour. So as you can see, we manufacture roughly 30 solar panels every hour. Now, this is of course linked to our inventory. So if you look at the inventory and the levels, the first number here, this tells us how much we have each of the components in the inventory. I will actually now increase the clock speed so that we start seeing changes with a faster pace. So now the clock is running faster. And whenever we manufacture solar panels in the end product, we take the components from the inventory, and then the solar panel inventory is increasing. We can steer the production process by turning on and shutting down the production shifts. I will continue like this at the moment. So we are manufacturing now in two shifts. And of course, what is obvious here is that if I don't do anything, we will sooner or later run out of the components. And I think the most acute situation here is with the junction boxes. You need 2 junction boxes in all of the solar panels. So if we manufacture 30 solar panels, we need 60 junction boxes every hour. Now, let's make our first decision. So we decide, or the students decide that now the junction box inventory is too low, they need to make a purchase. So we have a look at the suppliers of junction boxes. And now they have to balance between the cost of the component, the delivery speed of the component, and the term of payment they get from the supplier. And if we think that the inventory is not that high and we will soon run out of junction boxes, then I think we need to select a supplier which delivers fast. This one, for example. So this supplier, Milal Aluminium from Austria, delivers junction boxes in 2 days and 18 hours. And of course, now, if the students have done the pre-assignment, they know roughly how much they need components per day, and then they know how much to purchase from the supplier. I'm just guessing whether this might be a good number. So I will now make a purchase of 2,000 units from the fastest supplier, whose price is actually quite high compared to the other ones. And now I can see in the forthcoming events window that the components I purchased, they will arrive on 4th of January. Daniel, anything you want to add here?
I think what's important is that the students, obviously, because they're working in teams, you've got to give them time to plan in advance. Yeah. So you're coming into this, obviously, seeing this without having any pre-planning. I would have made sure, again, not just linking with the topics, but I would have gone through the bit of material. We would have talked about trade-offs in operations and supply chain. And we would then have done some of these activities in advance. So when they're actually online having a go in the live game, they've already got the basics. I think also something I'm doing at the moment is you can let the students go in and look at any time. This is what's so powerful about the tool. It's because it's cloud-based. I don't have to be there. The students have got access to all this information. They can have a go at trying things out with the clock kind of stopped. I think that makes the learning much more effective.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I will continue the purchases because in the long run, of course, I want to purchase from the cheapest supplier. So it's this one who has a 4.5 day delivery time. And again, I will purchase 2,000. So now I have placed 2 orders and you can see when they will arrive. So this, of course, tells the students about the lead times in the supply chain. So they have to make decisions early enough not to run into trouble. What we have done here, as you saw, we also have a term of payment from the suppliers. So the purchases are made, of course, they also affect my future cash flow. So probably this one is the other junction box purchase. So we will pay for the junction boxes in 14 days, I guess. So this one, yes. So they will be paid on the 16th of January. And then the other one, this one must also be the junction box purchase from this supplier. So it's not only about the cause effects in the supply chain, but also how the operations affect the supply chain and profitability, of course. So if I click here, I can see that the purchases have been recorded in my income statement. So this is an example of some very basic decisions in RealGame. And of course, there are many other. The students, they make purchases, they follow inventory levels, they steer the production process, they have sales offers to the customers, they use logistics services to deliver customer orders to the customers. We actually already have 7 customer orders, but I will not go now to deliveries, but let's next discuss how we connect carbon emissions to the supply chain. So for that, the idea is that we first give students an understanding what the basic process is, not to confuse them with the carbon emissions in the beginning. But now, when they know the basic process, I can go to the teacher's tool and add CO2 values to the simulation game. I will turn on the clock again. And now when we come back to the simulation company, we notice that, for example, in junction box purchases, we now see what is the carbon emissions embedded in the components per component, and also the carbon emissions related to the delivery of the components. So if I now purchase, of course, the carbon footprint embedded in the components, it will move with the products to the inventory, as we can see here. And also the production process, this is energy consuming, so we can follow how much the production process consumes electricity. And then based on that and our selected energy suppliers, there is a certain carbon footprint related to the energy use. And of course, in our customer deliveries, when we use the logistics service providers, there is also CO2 footprint related to the customer deliveries.
And Timo, can I just say that obviously what this is doing is it's bringing into issue for the students to think about, as I said, these performance metrics. So using energy use, CO2, they can actually start to calculate the impact that they are having in terms of both manufacturer, production, as well as supply and also their delivery as well. And it helps them then to rethink about those trade-offs. So where before, and what you do is you introduce it as the scenario. So you introduce it that the market has changed and your customers are now have a much more conscious about the carbon footprint of their products, and how are you going to respond? So you actually create almost like a case scenario, and then you can start getting them to measure their performance, think about those trade-offs to do with maybe delivery time versus the carbon footprint, and it gets them to think about it, as I said, across the entire supply chain.
Exactly. So time is flying. So next I would like to move. So we will have a look at the RealGame business intelligence. So how the student teams can analyze their own performance, but also how they are doing compared to the competition. And of course, in this session, this was just a demonstration, so we don't have any competition here. But actually, I took the liberty of borrowing one of Daniel's sessions with his students. So here we can see the interface of one of the companies in that session. And I can see that, Daniel, you run the session something like 3.5 months. And now both the teacher and the students, they have access to the business intelligence. And let's have a look at a couple of KPIs from the business intelligence. I don't think you had any students here, so probably company number 5 was, Daniel, your company, so I will just hide it.
Yeah, that was
so here we have. So here we have 5 companies. Daniel, what would you look first if you analyze the basic supply chain?
So I think what we looked at was those key performance indicators. So one of them is revenue, but later on we looked at things like their CO2. So what I did is actually almost, I can't remember exactly, but I did like a dashboard where against those 4 or 5 key performance indicators, return on investment, revenue, and so on, is I can then gauge how people performed.
Yeah. Well, of course, everybody is always interested in the income statement-based key figures like gross margin and results. So now we can see who did well in terms of profit. But then, of course, there are other aspects also, especially if we talk about operations management or supply chain management. So we could have a look at, for example, the inventory total value of the companies. This was not very wise, I guess. Yeah. Huge inventory in company number 2.
I can explain that as well. I think what it was interesting with this group is that they misread the demand signals, and I think they actually increased the capacity of their production at a huge rate and produced a lot of stock that was not necessary. But what they straight away realized is the impact from a business perspective of how holding so much stock. You'll see that's one of the direct, talk about causal links. You could actually see that because of those decisions they've made, how it's impacted their performance. And later when Timo shows specifically about CO2, again, that had a knock-on effect about the amount of CO2 they were holding.
Yeah. By the way, I forgot to tell you that, of course, each line here is one company, and the dots are the daily development of the specific KPI. So here we can see, for example, the inventory total value development of company number 2 from day to day. Regarding this kind of a basic supply chain related KPIs, I would also always have a look at the open order backlog. So how much they have customer orders in the end of the day that have not yet been delivered. Delivery accuracy is an important customer service related KPI, and the best delivery accuracy seems to be in company number 2, the one with the very high inventory. I guess it's natural they have the goods to deliver to the customers, so that's why their delivery accuracy is the best.
Yeah, and I can say also, what's great with the way I use the simulations is it's not the team that performs the best, the necessary do as well. It's actually about learning by making mistakes. All of my times I use the simulation, it's linked to an assessment, either a group assessment where they're using data like this to go and report on why they performed the way they've done vis-a-vis their competitors. On my MSc and MBA program at Birmingham, I use individual learning logs. So again, what you're trying to do is get them to link between the decisions they made, maybe that's holding too much stock, holding too little stock, and how that impacts the delivery of this case, a product to an end customer. And then I get them to link it back to the class material. So in our learning log and our final assignment, obviously they might have talked about one example, forecasting. Did they use simple moving averages, exponential smoothing? Which type of methodology did they use, and how did it work? And the same going with inventory. Did they keep a level capacity plan and they try and keep inventory at high, or do they try and chase demand in that way? So it really brings to life, the things we teach and talk about in terms of capacity. And the core kind of the concepts within operations and supply chain, but also, as I said, what Timo will look at a little bit later, also the links with the carbon footprint.
Yeah, I think we need to move there because time is flying. So let's have a look at the carbon footprint of the end products in the companies. And it seems that the best performance is company number 3. And I guess their turnover was the second biggest and close to the one who was the biggest.
Yeah, and it's interesting when they did their group presentations, they had great pleasure at telling everyone how great they were, and it's that kind of competitive edge, which is fun. But as I said, it's not about. I don't ever link my assessments with who did the best. It's more about who learned the most and can reflect and understand why they did well or poorly.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we need to move forward to the final slides. Where do I have here? Here it is. And the sharing again. Let's remove that one, but this one. So we have now had a look into practical methods for integrating sustainability into operations management teaching. And we have briefly touched how to give students the possibility to exercise balancing multiple operations management objectives. As such, RealGame enhances students' learning of critical operations management skills. So real-time decision-making and feedback. In that, students make operational decisions and they see the impact on costs, revenue, and sustainability metrics. Balancing multiple objectives, students weigh profit, efficiency, and sustainability simultaneously, mirroring real-world dilemmas. And thirdly, experiential learning with data. Experiential learning is motivating to students, and they are eager to learn from their decisions and the outcomes from them. And these can be expected to lead to improved learning.
Yeah, and I think with improved learning that I've seen that in my kind of in my feedback from my students in terms of bringing these topics that can be quite dry to life. I think also it's that teamwork. They're working in groups. From my MBA, MSc students, they're in small groups of 3, and it's also learning about the group dynamics and listening to each other. So it goes beyond just, I think, teaching the key concepts to do with operations and supply chain management. It also kind of goes in terms of, as I said, group dynamics and how people work effectively in teams.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. So I guess we have used our time. Very briefly, the learning outcomes from using RealGame. of course, the students, they understand the basic supply chain and production management related things. They learn to identify how and where carbon emissions are generated. They learn to reduce the carbon footprint at every stage of the supply chain. They learn to interpret and use performance and financial data. They evaluate the impact of sustainability on customer demand, and they recognize the effect of sustainability actions on profitability. There might be other ones also, but these are like the core learning outcomes. We would very much like to talk with you. So I guess today we will send you an email, and we are happy to meet you in this kind of a personal demonstration where we can show more of the functionalities and the possibilities with RealGame. And also, if you go to our webpage, you have this kind of a contact form where you can enter your information, and we are happy to contact you. So www.realgame.fi. So I guess it's now time to thank you everybody for participating. Thank you very much, Daniel, for being with us here. And we hope to talk with you soon.